The man in the broken wheelchair. In the dusty outskirts of Ekuna village, where red soil stained every barefoot and gossip spread faster than wildfire, a man sat alone beneath the shade of a shriveled baobab tree. His wheelchair, rusted and worn, creaked with every breeze. One wheel was barely functional, forcing him to push with both hands and drag the other side like a stubborn mule. His clothes were threadbare, his hair disheveled, and his legs twisted and useless hung limp over the side of the seat. The villagers called him Quasi the cripple. Children mimicked his movement when no elders were watching, limping in mockery. Mothers warned their daughters not to stare at him for too long, lest they catch his curse. And the local boys, especially the ones who thought themselves gods in their skinny jeans and knock-off sneakers, used him for entertainment. "Hey Quasi!" shouted Tunji, the self-proclaimed leader of the bullies, as he strolled past with his crew. "You need help rolling to your dreams." The others laughed. Quasi didn't answer. He never did. He just turned his gaze to the horizon, eyes like quiet fire, deep and knowing. It wasn't anger, nor pain, it was patience. An unusual kind of strength wrapped in silence. "One day, you'll rot there, and the ants will carry your bones," another boy chuckled. Quasi smiled faintly. Not because their words didn't sting, but because he knew something they didn't. He was not what he appeared to be. Years earlier, Quasi had lived a different life. Born to one of the wealthiest men in Ghana, Quasi Mensah grew up in luxury. He studied engineering in London, developed groundbreaking transport software, and returned home with a dream to build accessible infrastructure across Africa. But on the night of his return, an assassination attempt meant for his father left Quasi half paralyzed and presumed dead. Rather than return to the lavish world that tried to kill him, Quasi disappeared into the rural north under a false name. His wealth remained untouched, locked away behind layers of security. From Ekuna village, he monitored his assets through solar-powered tablets and a private satellite link buried under his modest hut. He watched how people treated the weak. And he waited. One afternoon, as the sun scorched the red earth, the village chief's daughter, Amara, approached him. She was different. She didn't laugh. She didn't look away. "I saw them push you yesterday," she said softly. "They have no right." Quasi looked up. Amara was beautiful, skin like polished mahogany, eyes that studied before they judged. "They're just boys," he replied, voice gravelly but calm. "Boys test their strength on what they think is weak." Amara sat beside him. "And what do you think they'll do when they find out you're not weak?" Quasi's eyes glinted. "That's what I'm waiting to find out." Days passed. Word spread that a major tech company was investing in the village. New boreholes were being drilled. The broken clinic got solar panels overnight. Children received free laptops. No one knew where the money came from, but rumors sparked like lightning. Then one morning, 3 sleek black SUVs rolled into the village square, followed by a helicopter landing outside town. The villagers poured out to watch, squinting against the dust and whirring blades. From the car stepped a sharply dressed man with a tailored suit and polished cane. The bullies watched in awe. But then their jaws dropped. The man with the cane hobbled toward them, only it wasn't just anyone. It was Quasi. Except now, he wasn't in the broken wheelchair. He stood upright with assistance, wearing Italian shoes and an air of authority that silenced even the crickets. Tunji stammered, but how?" Quasi didn't answer. Instead, he turned to the village chief and said, "The foundation I represent is offering to rebuild your school, open a tech hub, and provide jobs. I've been here long enough to know the heart of this place." The chief, stunned, nodded vigorously. Yes, yes, please. That evening, while the villagers celebrated, the bullies sat in silence. Quasi approached them one last time. You thought you were mocking a cripple, he said, his voice calm but firm. But really, you were exposing yourselves. I gave you nothing, and you gave me everything I needed to see who you are. Then he walked away, the moonlight catching the diamond pin on his collar. The news of Quasi's true identity spread through Ecuna like wildfire laced with petrol. By sunrise, even neighboring villages had heard the tale of the mysterious cripple, who turned out to be a billionaire. Elderly men nodded sagely, as if they had known all along. Women whispered about his sharp jawline and calm strength. Children who once mocked him now bragged that they always liked him. But the ones most disturbed were the bullies. Tunji could not sleep. He stared at his ceiling of raffia palm, remembering every time he had kicked dust in Quasi's face, every insult, every shove. He wasn't just ashamed, he was terrified. The man he humiliated held the power to destroy his life with a whisper. And yet, Quasi said nothing. He neither punished nor retaliated. That silence burned deeper than any revenge. Quasi's new home was still the same mud hut, but only on the outside. Inside, sleek solar-powered panels ran along the walls, powering satellite monitors, private servers, and encrypted communication systems. It was a secret tech den in the middle of rural Ghana. He sat before his main screen, speaking to his assistant in Accra. The trust is complete, he asked. Yes, sir. All your assets have been transferred to the Quasi-Mensa initiative. You now own 4 healthcare companies, 2 transport logistics firms, and the largest mobile microfinance app in West Africa. Good, Quasi replied. Now move the headquarters here. In Ecuna. There was a pause. Sir, this is a village. Quasi smiled faintly. Yes. That's the point. The next week, bulldozers arrived. The same boys who once laughed at him now begged for construction jobs. Quasi gave them work, but only after making them sit through training sessions on humility, accountability, and public service. Some resisted. Others wept in shame. Amara watched everything quietly. She visited him often now, bringing mangoes and fried yam. Her presence was soothing, grounding. One evening, she sat across from him under the baobab tree where it had all begun. Why didn't you punish them? She asked, handing him roasted plantain wrapped in leaves. Quasi took a bite, then replied, because punishment teaches fear. But grace, that teaches them to see themselves. She looked at him, long and searching. Do you always hide behind lessons? Quasi blinked. What do you mean? You're kind, generous, and brilliant. But you wear your silence like armor. What are you really afraid of? He didn't answer immediately. Then finally, he whispered, I'm afraid that if I let go of the mask, the pain will flood back. Amara gently touched his hand. Then let someone hold the flood with you. Meanwhile, in the capital, enemies stirred. A powerful tycoon named Kobe Dankwa, whose transport empire had once tried to sabotage Quasi's father, heard whispers of the crippled genius re-emerging from hiding. He sent men to investigate. What they found was disturbing. Quasi wasn't just alive, he was thriving, and quietly building a corporate revolution from a place no one would have expected. He must be stopped, Kobe said. Before he becomes a god among the people. Back in Ecuna, the new tech hub opened with a ceremony attended by ministers, journalists, and tribal chiefs. Drones flew overhead, capturing the sleek building with its solar glass panels and wind towers. Quasi stood before the crowd, cane in hand, Amara by his side. Inclusivity is not charity, he said. It is necessity. A society that leaves behind the weak will soon crumble beneath its own arrogance. I was left behind, but I chose not to stay there. Now, I choose to build. The crowd erupted in applause. But not everyone was clapping. A man in the shadows, wearing dark glasses and speaking into a hidden mic, said, "He's growing too fast." Begin Phase 1. That night, an explosion rocked the village. The solar station behind the tech hub was set ablaze. Screams filled the air. Fire devoured the compound like a hungry beast. Quasi rushed to the scene, ignoring the ache in his legs, dragging himself with every ounce of strength. He found 2 engineers injured, 1 unconscious. Without hesitation, he entered the smoke-filled building. Amara screamed for him to stop, but he didn't listen. Inside, he pulled the injured man to safety, collapsing beside him. The villagers watched in stunned silence as the man they once mocked now risked his life for them. The fire was eventually tamed. Quasi, burned on one arm and coughing from smoke, sat outside, sipping water. A reporter knelt beside him. "You saved them. Why?" Quasi coughed, then replied, "Because real power is not in showing strength, it's in protecting others, even when you are weak." Later that night, in a secret call with his assistant, Quasi said, "They're coming." The fire was a warning. "Shall we report them to the government?" Quasi shook his head. "No, we handle this our way. Quietly. Strategically." He glanced out his window, where Amara sat watching the stars. "There's too much to lose now." The scent of smoke still lingered in the air days after the fire. Though the villagers had resumed life, there was a quiet tension beneath every smile, every handshake. They had seen a man walk through flames to save others, and now, they were watching closely. Quasi's injuries were healing, but the attack had shifted something in him. He had spent years hiding, observing, offering silent justice. Now, his enemies had come too close. It was time to defend not just himself but the people who had become his home. He stood before the tech hub's charred remains, surrounded by his engineers. "Rebuild it," he said. "Make it stronger. Fireproof materials. Reinforced server rooms. Double the staff." One young technician raised a hand. "But sir, what if they come again?" Quasi turned to him. "Then they will see that every time they strike, we rise higher." In Accra, Kobe Dankwa was livid. The fire had failed. Worse, Quasi had become a hero in the media. Headlines praised his courage. Donations to his foundation doubled in 3 days. Foreign investors were asking to visit Ekuna. "This cripple is becoming dangerous," Kobe growled. "Sir," his advisor said, "maybe we should consider a truce." Kobe smashed a glass on the table. "Truce? With a ghost from the past? Never. He humiliated my father. He buried my transport empire with one software release." He paused, then smiled coldly. "If we can't burn his project, we'll break his spirit." That night, a van stopped outside Amara's family compound. 2 masked men snatched her as she stepped out to fetch water. A note was left behind, pinned to the ground with a knife. "Call off your mission, or lose what you value most." The news hit Quasi like a thunderbolt. He read the note once, then again. His hand trembled not from fear, but from fury. He activated the hidden server in his hut and opened a live map. Drones launched from a hidden hangar he had built months ago. They scanned roads, heat signals, and phone towers. Within hours, Quasi traced the van to an abandoned cocoa factory 30 kilometers away. He called the local police, but they laughed. "Sir, with all due respect, we don't have fuel for patrol bikes, let alone raiding old factories." Quasi didn't argue. He simply sent a text. That night, 3 black off-road vehicles rolled out of Ecuna, headlights off, tires crunching softly. Inside were 6 ex-military operatives, Quasi's private security, trained overseas, stationed quietly under the cover of community volunteers. They reached the factory by midnight. Inside, Amara was tied to a chair. Bruised but defiant, Kobe's men stood around lazily, joking, unaware of the silent storm approaching. It took less than 15 minutes. Smoke bombs, chokeholds, lights out. When it ended, Amara was in Quasi's arms, trembling but safe. He didn't say a word. Neither did she. But in her eyes, something had changed. Not pity, not fear, love. The next morning, Kobe received a package. Inside was a small recorder with one message. Come for me again, and I won't send warnings. I'll send the truth to every news channel, every shareholder, every bank you launder money through. The game has changed. Choose wisely. Quasi Mensa. For the first time in years, Kobe felt something alien, fear. The tech hub reopened a week later, bigger, stronger, more secure. And this time, with a new wing named Amara Hall, dedicated to women's empowerment. Amara was appointed director. She gave her first speech in front of the whole village, standing beside Quasi. Power isn't just about money or machines, she said. It's about protecting what's right, even when it's hard. Even when you're scared. She paused, then smiled toward Quasi. And sometimes, the strongest warriors don't look like warriors at all. Quasi watched the villagers cheer, the children wave, the bullies, now humble workers, clap with eyes full of respect. His heart stirred. He had spent years behind a mask. But now, the village knew who he was. Not the cripple. Not the billionaire. Just Quasi, the man who had turned pain into purpose. But as the sun dipped below the hills, casting golden light across the tech hub, he felt something new stir in his bones. Peace. Real peace. From ashes to legacy. The days that followed the reopening of the tech hub were filled with change, but the kind that quietly reshapes a place over time. Quasi had long stopped being the poor cripple in the eyes of Ecuna. He was now a symbol of perseverance, innovation, and silent leadership. The people who once mocked him now looked to him for guidance. The children followed him around, not to imitate his limping walk but to catch glimpses of the mind that had turned the village into something extraordinary. Amara, now officially heading the new women's empowerment wing of the tech hub, was also flourishing. She had learned much from Quasi, not just in technology but in the way he carried himself, never seeking praise, always working quietly behind the scenes. In many ways, she became his partner, helping shape his vision of a future where the weak were not left behind but lifted up. But while the village flourished, another battle brewed on the horizon. Kobe Dankwa's wrath had not subsided. He had not forgotten the humiliation. In fact, it had made him more dangerous. Now that Quasi had stolen his thunder, Kobe's empire seemed to tremble at the edges. The press had caught on to the whispers about his corrupt dealings, and although he had managed to bury some stories, others refused to die. Quasi knew this battle was not over. It had only just begun. Late one night, Quasi sat at his desk in his small office, staring at the satellite map of Ghana. The red dots blinking across the screen marked all the points of his interests: his solar-powered farms, the newly established health clinics, the schools, and the growing fleet of delivery trucks spreading across the region. His empire, built from nothing, was now an unstoppable force. Amara entered quietly, holding 2 cups of steaming tea. "You look tired," she said softly, setting one cup down in front of him. He smiled faintly. "Just thinking about Kobe?" she asked. He didn't need to answer. The fear was clear in her voice. Kobe had made no secret of his anger, and the threats had been escalating. Quasi had seen his name mentioned in the newspapers, along with rumors of illegal activities that Kobe was trying to cover up. But Quasi had learned something over the years. Some battles were fought in the open, others in silence. "I have a plan," Quasi said, finally breaking the silence. Amara raised an eyebrow, intrigued but cautious. "What kind of plan?" "The kind that ends this, once and for all." The next morning, Quasi summoned a meeting with his closest allies. There was no longer a need for secrecy, he had nothing to hide. His security team, his engineers, and even the village elders gathered in the central hall of the tech hub, their faces eager and curious. Quasi stood before them, looking every bit the leader he had become. "I've spent years running," he said. "But the time has come to stand. We will not cower in the face of fear any longer. Kobe Dankwa has made his move, but we will counter it." A man in a well-tailored suit, a legal advisor, spoke up. "Kobe's empire is huge, Quasi. He has the media, he has political ties, and he controls nearly half of the transport sector in the region. You cannot defeat him with a few drones and a few hackers." Quasi's eyes glinted with resolve. "You think I've only been building this?" He gestured to the room, his voice steady. "I've been building something bigger than just tech companies. I've been building alliances. People in high places owe me favors. I have my hands in things you wouldn't imagine." Amara, who had been listening quietly, stepped forward. "This isn't about Kobe anymore. This is about the people we represent. This is about Ekuna, about every village that has been left behind." Quasi nodded. "Exactly. This is not just a battle for wealth. It's a battle for justice. For what's right." Quasi's plan was simple but daring. He would use Kobe's own tactics against him. He would expose Kobe's criminal activities, the ones the media had nearly forgotten about, and broadcast them to the world. With the help of his allies, Quasi was prepared to go after Kobe's transportation empire, his shady business dealings, and even his involvement in exploiting the poorest regions of Africa for profit. But there was one catch: Quasi had to play it carefully. If he moved too quickly, it could backfire. Kobe was powerful, but Quasi's silent army was patient, and patience would be their greatest weapon. For weeks, Quasi, Amara, and their allies worked behind the scenes. They gathered evidence. They hacked Kobe's financial records. They used the media to turn the tide. And slowly, Quasi's plan began to unfold. Meanwhile, Kobe was on edge. He had underestimated Quasi before, but he was starting to realize that he had made a mistake. Quasi wasn't just a threat, he was a force that could bring down his entire empire. But it was too late. The final blow came when Quasi leaked a series of confidential documents to the press, documents that exposed Kobe's links to illegal mining operations, exploitation of workers, and bribery of government officials. The story broke across the continent, and within hours, Kobe's once thriving empire began to crumble. The village of Ekuna, the very place Kobe had once scorned, now stood as a symbol of resilience. Quasi had proven that no matter how strong the storm, the foundation of truth and justice could not be shaken. As the months passed, Quasi watched the transformation of Ekuna. The tech hub expanded, creating jobs for hundreds. The healthcare clinics began to make real changes in people's lives. The roads were no longer impassable, and children went to school in buildings that were safe and well equipped. Quasi's legacy was no longer tied to the shadows of his past or the mask he had once worn. He had built something far more enduring, a legacy of empowerment, of lifting the weak, of teaching that true power lies not in wealth, but in the ability to change the world for the better. As the sun set one evening, Quasi and Amara stood together at the edge of the village, watching the people below. The wind whispered through the trees, and the distant hum of life filled the air. "We did it," Amara said softly. Quasi smiled, his face lit by the golden glow of the setting sun. "No, Amara. We are doing it." And in that moment, Quasi knew that his battle had not been for money or revenge. It had been for a future where the crippled were not left behind, but instead lifted up, stronger than ever before. The end.